Hello everybody and welcome back to another Ross Reviews, where today we are doing another comparison, and this is against two absolutely gorgeous B series. This is a BF Typhoon and this is a BF GT. Manual, ZF, 6 versus 8. Let's get into it. Now let's just go ahead and introduce both of these cars. If you're familiar with the channel, you will know this is my very own 2006 Mark I BF F6 Typhoon. And while it's in reasonably stock condition at the moment, I really wanted to get this comparison done. Now under the bonnet, this has the legendary 4-liter inline-6 turbocharged Barra. This made 270 kilowatts of power and about 556 Newton meters of torque from factory. This has the ZF 6-speed auto and does 0 to 100 in about 5 seconds. Now over here with the GT, this is quite special. This is a 2007 Mark II, and this has the Boss 302. So under the bonnet is a naturally aspirated quad cam V8, and this thing makes 302 kilowatts of power and about 540 Newton meters of torque. This has got the 6-speed manual and will also do 0 to 100 in about 5 seconds. Both of these cars are in silhouette black, and both of these cars are modified in basically the same way. My car has got coilovers and a wastegate. This car has got coilovers and an exhaust system. And just quickly with the differences on these two cars, look, they are basically the same car with a different engine, though there are a few slight differences here to mention. So obviously you can see straight away the GT gets this lovely bonnet bulge. You've got the Boss 302 sticker on the side there. It just looks really good. Also in the front, the bumpers are slightly different here. So in the mesh, they get a different mesh design. This one has kind of more of a diamond pattern, where over on the F6 you get a kind of triangular, little bit more aggressive, I think, on the F6. Also down here where the intercooler opening is, it is slightly different again to the GT, and also the fog lights are different. I know mine is missing the fog lights and my front bumper is toast, but I am planning to get that fully restored very, very soon. Also with the rear wings, I've got a rear wing, the GT's got a rear wing, the GT gets a bigger rear wing. This car's got quad exhausts, this has got a single one coming out the rear. So let's see what these cars sound like. Starting off in the Typhoon. Well, this is my Typhoon, so look, I am quite familiar with this car, and you know, I love this thing. I really do. You know, the Barras, ever since the first time I hopped in a Barra, you know, I just loved the way these things delivered their power, and it just puts a smile on my face from ear to ear. It really does. And just building on it here, takes a little bit of lag, and then it just holds you in that seat position. You know, you feel it kind of just building, and then it's just progressing the whole way through in that turbo. So yeah, it is really good. And the steering in this Typhoon is actually really nice. It's got quite a weighted feel to it compared to some other Falcons I've reviewed, and it just pretty darty, to be honest. There is not a lot of play in the center of this wheel. It really is quite responsive. You know, it does take a little bit of effort to move this thing because it is a big car. It's 1.8 ton, but you can feel those wheels are turning straight away, and it's actually very impressive. considering this has BC racing coilovers, like we mentioned, both cars do have coilovers, it handles itself really well. You know, mine is a little bit stiff for, you know, maybe the average person who wants to daily it, but for driving around the corners, it's great. And you hear that little, you know, the blow-off valve. I just love that. The most disappointing thing of this car has got to be the sound. And when you're just driving, this actually has a middle muffler delete, so it sounds a little bit better than it would from factory, but it's nothing to rave about. I do love how you get that subtle blow-off valve, you know, every time you get into that boost and let off, but yeah, all the way through, you just don't hear much at all. It's kind of a silent assassin, this car, and I think that's where you get more enjoyment driving a V8, for sure. I love to change my own gears, I really do, you know, and even in the Barra, I prefer to drive manual Barras, but I know that the ZF is the preferred suitor for these because it just puts the power down really well, you know, you don't have to let off the throttle, it just sends it right through the gears, and, you know, you can get some insane times with these things, but I do love sending it and changing my own gears. Great thing with the ZF is, you know, you can tick it over into performance mode, and then the gearbox is just a little bit more aggressive, and then if you would like to take over, you have that ability, and it's suited in the right, correct, only way it should be done, where you pull it down to go up a gear, you push it forward to go back down, because that's the proper sequential way, and when you're really getting stuck into it, you really just want to pull those gear shifts back and let this thing send it. And funny enough, in 2006, when this exact car came out, Motor Mag named this Australia's Performance Car of the Year. And by golly, I completely 110% agree with them on that, boy. It's a monster. And the performance is just, if you were after outright performance, this is what you buy. It's definitely what you buy. Don't look at the V8. Just go straight for the Typhoon, and you're not going to get better. For the money you had to spend and straight out the factory, absolutely brilliant. Now, 0 to 100. Look, we're on this back road. It is definitely not the ideal road, but you know, we can probably make this work. So I'm just going to leave this in performance mode. I'm not going to run the gears myself. We'll just see what we get here. So just build it up a little bit. I will turn traction control off. $100. I did feel like I was trying to preload it a little bit more. And look, this road is not ideal, so it's definitely not a great time, I'm sure. But, you know, it's the thing with this car. It takes a little bit of time to get into the boost, I find, when you launch it. But once it's in the boost, you know, it really goes quick. It's really just trying to build the revs up to go. It would be so good if this thing had a launch control feature. I really think that would just make the time so much better. It really would. Now, getting into the GT here. Oh, the single best thing about this car is just that right there. Just easing into that right foot, hearing that exhaust note, and shifting your own gears. That is really what makes the V8s, the GTs, just so much more special, you know, in its own way, because yeah, just the V8 history, the manual really feels like a proper muscle car, this thing. And especially when you're in the driving position in here, you know, look, it's quite a similar seat, but you see that bonnet bulge and, you know, that huge rear wing in the rear view mirror. It just adds that little bit more again. You know, I absolutely love the bonnet bulge. And this particular example, look, I gotta say, this has gotta be one of the nicest GTs I've seen, because this thing is running under 25,000 Ks. It feels brand new, and honestly, this feels like it just came out of the showroom. You know, the seats are in perfect condition. There is like no wear on them. The wheel even feels brand new. It is just spectacular, this thing. And the shifts, you know, the gearbox, the pedals, man, it is solid. This thing feels $1 million right now. And just laying into it a little bit here. Man, that is just, at the end of the day, that is why people buy the GT over the Barra, because just the noise of it, it just has such a nice note. You know, this is running an Xforce exhaust system. So, you know, it isn't factory, but even from factory, you know, these things sounded bloody good. And shifting your own gears, look, just running it through there, you know, you can feel there is a slight power difference. And the way this thing delivers its power is quite different to the Barra, but it's satisfying. Now, these Boss 302s were first shown in the Cobras, and that was a special edition that was brought out. And look, those are some of the coolest Falcons I think they've ever done. And a lot of people put them high up on the list of cars, you know, they wish they had in their garage, me included. And, you know, look, they only made 400 sedans of those and 100 utes. So it was a really rare car. And actually, funny enough, the fact that this has a 302, it makes it almost more rare than the Cobra, because only about 250 odd GTs got the 302 Boss, and only about 70 odd GTPs and another 90 odd Super Pursuit Utes. You know, so it was very, very rare to get, you know, a late model Mark II with the Boss 302. Now, just quickly, a huge shout out to this week's Patreon supporters. If you guys want to join the Patreon, get early access to content, videos, merch, there is a link in the description, so check it out. Now, some of the interior differences on these cars, look, they are basically identical, though there are a few minor differences. Now, obviously, this one has the leather trim upgrade, so the seats are much nicer. You know, you have a different kind of pattern in the seats, which also translates to the side of the door panel. So the door panel gets a different trim / pattern. Now, also with the steering wheel, it is different to mine in the Typhoon for whatever reason. This one doesn't have a little FPV pin on it, and it feels a little bit more solid, not as leathery as mine does. And again, with the gauges up here, these are different gauges to the Typhoon. Obviously, the Typhoon has a oil pressure and a boost gauge. This is an oil pressure and an oil temperature gauge. And with the steering, for whatever reason, I feel like it is slightly lighter in this GT. It's still got that, it still has that similar feel to it of the Typhoon, but it just feels a little bit more assisted. It just does have a little bit more of an easy turn-in. Steering is still great though. You know, there's really hardly any play. You know, it takes a little while for this car to actually move, but you can feel those wheels are turning straight away. And again, in the Typhoon, I do feel like, you know, for surprisingly enough, these cars have really good steering. And you go around a bend, you just have a lot of nice feel in it. It does feel pretty good. kind of is playing with me here is that the 302 it actually does feel pretty comparable to my old XR8 with the Boss 260 in it. You know, obviously I would say this is probably that tad bit quicker on the top end. If we had both of those cars running, you know, you would see this thing have a little bit of an advantage. But, you know, for its delivery of power and just the way you feel your acceleration, it really is comparable. Even though this does have, you know, that extra, you know, 42 kilowatt. 0 to 100, guys. So this thing was claimed about 5 seconds from factory. Look, you know, we're gonna just take it up to speed. Obviously, we're in the manual, so, and we're not on a racetrack or anything, so we'll just see what it does. So, 3, 2, 1. It bogs a little bit. $100. Again, you know, you could build the revs up probably a little bit more, but, you know, look, I don't want to start spinning the wheels and that. So, you know, look, it's it definitely has a more ease when it builds its power, but it still gets there. I'm just running through the gears here again. That's the beauty of it. That is the beauty of having a GT, of having a V8, mate, is just the noise of these things on song is just so good. And I think that's the real treat about having one of these, you know, V8 GTs over a Typhoon, is because, especially when they're not modified very heavily, is that you get a little bit more enjoyment, I feel like, out of this car, because you can change the gears, you feel like you're doing a little bit more, you can hear that exhaust, you can hear that rumble a bit more, and it just makes for a more engaging drive. So until you really start modifying these things, you know, I think the GT definitely stands out as something that can be potentially more enjoyable, and especially on a nice cruise, it's really good, this thing. It really is. So, conclusions. We've driven both now, the GT and Typhoon. What's better? Well, look, it really depends on what you like, you know, what you prefer to drive, what you're going to use it for. Because personally, I think in the conditions these two cars are in right now, I'm leaning towards the GT. I like the sound, I like changing my own gears, and look, I think you'd really got to heavily modify this car before I'm going to take the Typhoon again, which I do plan on doing. But in a stock form, I really do think I'm going to give it to the GT. But I want to know from you guys, what would you take in stock form? What would you take as a modified form? Leave it in the comments below. So huge thanks as well to Joe for actually bringing out his GT, letting me review it. And also, big shout out to the WA FPV Collective group. So there'll be a link in the description below. If you guys want to join or check it out, please go ahead and do that. I'm actually a member as well, repping the sticker on the side of the car. And as always, guys, if you're new here, please go ahead and hit that like button, consider subscribing, and we'll see you on that next video.